Excerpts from the Cutler Almanac on the Prime Timeline following the split point. Ministry researchers noticed that nearly all Earth societies across a multitude of timelines started serious faster-than-light travel around 2200 local calendar time. It also appeared to be occurring in the Prime Timeline. Some researchers were concerned this similarity and others could imply this timeline might also be studied and infiltrated by some other Ministry of Timelines. Although this concern was lessened given that they were likely as thick as pig poo. The curators were met in 2204, a possible rival to the Ministry. Further investigation was required. Then a slight issue with amenities arose. People weren't getting them. This led to considerable unhappiness as the people ended up staring at walls as a pastime. Leader of the Ministry, Chief Councillor Victor Ecclesiaberg, didn't see the problem. From his country mansion with heated swimming pool and private screening room, "Let them eat cake," he told an assistant briefing him on the issue while eating a cake. The people were of course outraged. Protests formed and they marched on the Ministry. Victor, however, had a statue built of himself, and then nobody cared any longer about the shortage of amenities. Perhaps because they found a good target to throw rotten fruit at. 2207. The first human colony was established in the Widor system on Swordfish Cove. The colony ship gently touched down at the mouth of a large river delta on one of the several continents found on Swordfish Cove. The temperate, forested region would serve as an ideal first landing site. One new local said, "I bet there isn't any swordfish there," showing signs of being disgruntled in record time. The hegemony of Belbos Nation was met in 2211. They thought rather highly of themselves. They will definitely need better administration. A curator leader was hired in 2213, the first non-human councillor in the Ministry. Humanity learnt to accept other races into their command structure, even if they had to sell everything but the kitchen sink to afford it. It would be worth it, and at least people could still wash their own dishes, if they had any dishes. Unusual requests were made to the Ministry archives of alternate timelines. The requests were made using IDs of terrors currently on missions in alternate timelines. No video or identification of the culprits could be found. A miscalculation of the waste management system on Swordfish Cove led to a new endeavour to relocate the waste. Thank goodness Chief Councillor Victor Ecclesiaberg was so forward-thinking as he decided to send all waste to another dimension to get rid of it. A solution that couldn't possibly come back to kick the Ministry in the butt. The Codronites were met in 2215, and soon kind of wished that they hadn't been. They were extremely disrespectful to the Ministry. Even so, their vice president offered great deals on future business opportunities. Both sides loosely agreed that the Ministry should undertake a survey mission of Codronite territory, but details were hazy on who should pay. Us, most likely. A border toll was mentioned, but everyone then pressed on regardless. The year 2220 saw a Ministry of Timelines election upset. After 20 years in office, Victor Ecclesiaberg was voted out, instead replaced with Joaquim Mandela, an even more interventionist councillor with a bit of a hot head. The chief councillor was relegated to the position of senior adjunct to the council, not even a councillor anymore. When the senior adjunct learned how there were electrical blackouts because of low energy stores, and the people were once again protesting, he was heard to say, "That isn't a power shortage, that's a power opportunity." He sparked further protest by refusing an offer to develop solutions to the power problems, instead investing research into exotic gases. The research soon revealed how the gases had questionable effects on the human brain, which the adjunct acknowledged, but insisted were not dangerous, and definitely not addictive because he could quit huffing them at any time. The Blom were met in 2225. They came bearing farts. Or did I mean spores? Reports indicated they also liked the gases, so no, I probably meant farts. The Ministry discovered that the hegemony of Belbos kept their envoy, Fred, imprisoned in a plant pot. Fred's living conditions might have been caused by a misunderstanding of human physiology. Upon the chief counselor's remark of whether humans looked as if they needed to be watered in a pot, Emperor Igsham promised to look into the query. A cultural misunderstanding that might bode ill for the future of both empires, but especially for Ambassador Envoy Fred, who was struggling to get his 5 a day solely by standing in soil. Next, an insult was received from the Codronites. Something about their mother's spaghetti. What is this? I don't have time for this. The Codronites joined the Ministry with what is assumed a minimal loss of life. Afraid that the galaxy was a dangerous place, the Ministry had taken matters into their own hands to protect the lesser races. That's an actual quote from the chief counselor of the time, particularly from themselves. To that end, they launched a fleet of ships to encourage the Codronites to sign a mutually beneficial deal. They would cede all powers in diplomacy and warfare over to the Ministry, which was apparently much better equipped to handle that sort of thing. Following their victory over their neighbours, and in an effort to reduce military spending, a number of key ministers, including Chief Counselor Joaquim Mandela, put forth the notion to attack an ancient and powerful dreadnought lurking in the Ryganoth system. Maybe they wanted to reduce military spending by no longer having a military, but thankfully the senior adjunct helped them to understand it would be nearly suicide for the Ministry of Defense, a department within the Ministry of Timelines, and that system was then put under the interdict. The Ministry of Timelines opened a new division, the Ministry of Truth, on the Codronite capital in 2241. The Codronites began the requested daily 2 minutes of hate without even being asked. Good for them. After the Ministry attempted to repeat their success with the Codronites, the Belbos refused subjugation by means of procrastination, claiming they had lost all their pens and were simply unable to sign the documents. Part of the Ministry's demands included the release of a vassal nation that the Hegemony were cruelly oppressing. The newly salvaged derelict-class cruiser, the first in what would become the Second Fleet, headed to the Rantor system to engage hostiles in the Belbos space. Rantor was defended and then defeated. The Ministry of Timelines next began an assault on the Belbos capital system, itself called Belbos. The Emperor of the Hegemony was reported to have shouted, "Shut up, I'm pontificating," at a Ministry diplomat trying to ease tensions. The diplomat was reminded that you should always let the bad guys monologue. Whilst following the main fleet en route to Belbos to help the Emperor sign the treaty, the amoeba, lovingly known as Bubbles, was cruelly assassinated by the pathetic military of the Hegemony. Shouts of grief were heard across the galaxy. Bubbles died, Belbos lied. The galaxy will mourn forever. Belbos must burn for this murderous act. Ministry security forces then pulled out of Belbos in 2248. The official line was that it was out of respect for the death of Bubbles, and absolutely not because some senior military analysts said they couldn't take the Hegemony in a straight fight. A galactic staring contest began, and the war, document signing operation, I should say, grew cold. The Ministry, still in a kerfuffle with the Hegemony over contracts, invaded, no, that's not the Ministry approved word, they liberated the Gaia planet Rasselhague Prime, and there was much rejoicing. Following this, the Belbos Hegemony chose to cut their vassal loose. The Emperor reportedly said, yeah, get rid of them, they need to learn to survive on their own anyway. Ah, such magnanimity. The Rantor system, recently liberated from Hegemony tyranny, then revolted. Sources suggested a covert infiltration of the planet by Hegemony operatives was possible, and the aliens there then yearned for freedom once more. In 2254, the Blom agreed to sign the Ministry Accords, the paperwork that would protect them and grant all legal powers to the Ministry, and they did so without needing any encouragement. peace reigned. And shortly after, another Ministry of Truth was set up on the Blom homeworld. You remember the Blom? The aliens that like drugs. Nope, I didn't mean that. I mean gases. Exotic gases. Then, 10 years to the day since the Ministry signed an armistice with the Hegemony, they returned to try again to get signed that vassal contract, as the Hegemony were calling it. Equipped with new non-lethal weaponry, the Ministry hoped to secure galactic peace without the loss of any life. 2263 saw the Battle of Kerbal. Armed with their new non-lethal weapons, the Navy instead quickly found the lethal setting, and half of the Hegemony's navy tragically lost their lives trying to fight the March of Progress, also known as the Ministry of Timelines. They would be forever remembered as fools that should have woken up, smelt the coffee, and worked out how to be on the right side of history. The Ministry of Timelines had become friends with everyone. Friends in air quotes, of course. You can't see me doing it, not in this voice recording, but I am, trust me. More importantly, Chief Counselor Mandela secured peace and prosperity across the galaxy. No overt threat remained in the Prime Timeline to threaten the Ministry. And the Blom was the best at friendship. Hey, why is this scrawled in crayon over the rest of these historical notes? A Codronite spy working within the Ministry of Timelines managed to gain access to a high-level encryption key in 2265. The key allowed them and their criminal cartel unfettered access to the most classified information within the Ministry. In the wrong hands, such a security breach would have catastrophic consequences. And Codronite hands are most definitely the wrong hands. Ministry security seemed to be very leaky. Having united the galaxy under his austere leadership, Joaquim Mandela died in office. Vigils were held all across the known galaxy as people mourned the passing of a titan. Please refer to the next chapter for further excerpts from the Cutler Almanac on the Prime Timeline.